you doing, wrestling fans? And welcome to another edition of John and Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast, the only wrestling podcast that brings you back decades with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time, and this show is no exception. Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news and breaking developments that happened in real time. Now we get to relive those moments right here on this podcast. Today, we will review the show number 253 of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, which aired on 1240 AM WGBB in Babylon, New York on October the 23rd, 1994. Special guests include the living legend, Bruno Sammartino, who makes his last appearance on Pro Wrestling Spotlight on this particular show, as well as Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Before we get started with all that, I had a huge content drop on Patreon this past week from old 8mm films. Dropped Vern Gagne versus Mr. Fuji, Tony Gurria versus Don Leo Jonathan, and that comes from the November 12th, 1973 show at Madison Square Garden. So that's up on Patreon now, along with the new episode of Memories from Madison Square Garden, which covers that show, November 12th, 1973. There's so much more up there and more released every single Sunday. So go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. Check it out. Check out what level fits your budget most. And for $5 a month, that opens the door to the archives of this program. Don't forget, Pro Wrestling Spotlight is on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. So without further ado, we're going to bring on the man who always has a great opening, line for us. Our producer, our creative director, our friend Marsh. Marsh, how are you? Hey yo.
Yeah, I'm your Ed McMahon.
I always told you my cousin Jimmy said that, right?
Yeah.
My cousin who moved to Poland.
Would he say it like when you see him on the street or just on the phone?
When I'd say him phone, street, hi-oh, and he'd always come up with these sayings. He's an interesting cat, my cousin Jimmy. I think he's been married 5 times, but he's in Poland now with his wife and kids, and he's been there for a few years, and he's staying. He's not coming back to this country. He's staying in Poland.
He sounds lucky to me.
Well, he just can't come back to America, he says. It's just too crazy here. Meanwhile, he's on the border where there's a war going on with Ukraine. So,
well, that's got to tell you something.
Yeah, where is it not crazy today?
Yeah, but at the same time, if he's all like, "Look, there may be a war up the road here, but it's not as bad as what's
going on over there."
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah, I watched the the debates, and all I'm looking for is normal. And there seems to be not very much normal out there. You know, Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, they seem the most normal from the others. And then, of course, Trump does his own. He doesn't show up again, and he does his own rally. Everything is crazy.
It's so insane to me, the amount of stuff that's come out about Trump and the fact that there's he's still leading in polls, and there's just nothing that stops him from running. And I'm not trying to get super political,
but 60 points,
against
the other Republican challengers, and he's assured of the nomination. And then you have Biden, and everyone's saying he shouldn't run. And I mean, it's good. Next year is going to be unlike we've ever seen before. Next year is going to be crazy.
It's
already crazy, but it's going to be catastrophic no matter what happens.
I think it's going to be a real. I think it's going to be a major shift. I think no matter what happens, America's different next year.
Without a doubt. Whatever happens at the election next year, we'll see. I mean, we still got a year to go, but that the kettle is boiling. It's boiling, and you can't keep the lid on it. It's ready to blow. So anyway, we're in a different place in comparison to how I grew up and how you grew up for the most part. But I remember Kennedy. Kennedy was my hero. I was alive when he was president. I was born when Eisenhower was president. Although I don't remember him, I do remember Kennedy, and Kennedy was my hero. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
just
things
was
have
watching actually a
changed.
special on. I was watching a special on Kennedy the other day, and I was going to talk to you about it at some point. But yeah,
Was that the doc on the assassination?
yeah, I've been watching like 2 different ones. The day of
Yeah.
one was really interesting. Like, and they talk about how his approval rating was so incredibly high that it didn't
Mhm.
matter who was next. It was just going to be not
Right.
JFK. You
Right.
know,
Right.
just it was interesting as well. Also, what was wild is that him and his vice president LBJ disagreed on almost everything and hated each
Yeah, they
other.
didn't like each other. They didn't like each other at all.
I can't imagine 2 people running like that now. But like that was a political move to make him your vice president.
Right. It
Just
was to
fascinating.
get the votes in Texas
Yeah.
because
Yep. And to
JFK
keep an
was
eye on him.
popular in Texas. But yeah, I remember the day he got killed. I remember that. I was in 2nd grade. I was in class. I was in Catholic school. Because right now, we're in November. We're almost 60 years. It's gonna be 59 years this November 22nd.
Yeah.
Sitting in Catholic school with the nuns, and the Mother Superior came on the loudspeaker and said Kennedy was shot. And then 10 minutes later came back and said he was dead and dismissed the kids from school. And we all just kind of walked out stunned, and stayed in front of that TV for 4 days and saw Oswald get shot live on TV. It's like 7. It's like I hid under my couch for a couple of days. I was so afraid.
The news used to be
Anyway.
exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, then the Beatles came in 64 and it uplifted everybody's spirits when they showed up. But yeah, I'm kind of a freaking dinosaur. I'm glad I remember all this shit. I'm glad I lived through it in a lot of ways in comparison to what the kids have to grow up with now.
Yeah.
From TikTok to everything else that's destroying the brain cells of the entire nation. It's crazy.
It's weird too to realize that like how fast time goes. The fact that Mean Girls has a new musical version coming out.
January,
Yeah, but it's a remake.
I know.
It is a remake of the old movie that's so close to the other one that several of the actors are able to still play themselves. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Is
I was
Lindsay
just blown
Lohan
away.
in it?
I thought it was gonna be like a new twist on it, but it's not. It's the same
No,
story,
same
same
thing.
like it was. I'm like blown away. I saw the preview today and went, I am old.
Hey, it doesn't matter because kids don't know history today anyway. They don't even know what Mean Girls was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids just don't know history. If it didn't happen in the present time, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. And if
Anyway.
it doesn't happen in 30 seconds, then it's not worth watching.
Right. So yeah, we're fucked. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk about what happened 29 years ago on October 23rd, 1994.
Flair was going to be wrestling that night with his career on the line.
Oof.
This is it. This is the end of Flair. You did a whole intro. I'm not going to play it because we've had issues playing it before.
Because of the music?
Because of the music. Music's copyrighted. So, but it was a nice little homage you had to him playing his music and Flair after 25 years or whatever. It was cool.
It was a tribute.
Yeah.
Because everyone felt that was it.
Yeah.
And then Meltzer comes on and spills the beans.
Yeah. He's all like, it's Flair. Wait till you see Woo Energy. Don't worry about this, guys.
Yeah, Woo Energy.
Well,
God.
And then you do mention you have a new tape trading sponsor, the official distributor for ECW. And I didn't go back and listen to it yet, but I could have sworn we asked Todd Gordon specifically about this distributor, and he said no. He said we may not have stopped him, but we wouldn't have made him an official anything. Is what I recall. So I'm gonna go back and listen to it because I might be wrong.
Well,
but here,
maybe Rob was, maybe he had a deal, maybe he didn't. They didn't go after him. He was selling all these ECW tapes. I mean, this is where I got all my tapes of ECW was from him.
Yeah, but you specifically mentioned that he got the approval from Todd Gordon. You say it out loud.
Yeah.
So
and Todd denied that on this program.
I believe so. I'm going to go back and watch because I think that, and even then, I'm sure it was such a flippant, we need somebody to take the tapes out. This guy's already got a thing, whatever, whoever he is. I'm sure it wasn't the whole thing, But yeah, Rob Feinstein was back. And I don't know if I don't know if this was when all of his stuff took place. I don't know what years those were.
No,
so
I think it was well after that, actually.
I think so too. So
yeah, it was several years after that.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know why it would have been an issue then. So, but yeah, Rob Feinstein is back, approved by Todd Gordon as official ECW distributor. I thought that was kind of interesting to hear. And then you're gonna have Bruno on.
Yeah, looking forward to that. His last appearance on the show.
Yeah, Bruno was cool. We do have Donnie Liable, who's got his capsule, and then he stays on the line with you and Bruno. So we actually get a couple of clips with Donnie and Bruno together too, which is amazing.
Yeah, because he liked to give those tributes out. He used to write these little special things.
Yeah, we got a tribute and then a question, and it's just, I love that you can so adamantly hear, and we'll hear some of it, but not all of it. So people who got the full version on Patreon, you know what I'm talking about. It's so front and center how much you and Donnie, adored Bruno.
Revered that man.
Yeah. He was exalted above most else that you ever talked to. Like, you had such respect for so many people here, but Bruno was like a different beast when it came to you guys.
Because he was my hero. I mean, very first time I watched wrestling on TV in 1964.
Yeah.
That was it. And the Italian thing, and he was the champion, and it was just like he was God in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never had anything negative to say about him at all. Because he was just so respected, and it was just kind of magical for me even to know him.
Yeah. I felt like there was no difference to me between the way you talked about him and Freddie Blassie.
Those are the two. I was just about to mention Freddie's name. He was the other guy like that.
Yeah. Where it was just like the fact that we don't hear you get starstruck on the show on these old tapes, but you can hear that this is as close as you're going to get. Oh my God, we got Bruno. Oh my God, we got Freddie. I
get starstruck when I hear back. Even to this day, when I was uploading this show, I was kind of, wow, it's Bruno.
Yeah. But hearing even this interview here is another reason why I'm getting that gift I got that I showed this last year for Christmas, the Bruno signed foam title. I mean, and just every interaction I see and everything I hear from these old tapes and stuff just makes me appreciate that even more. It's like becoming a bigger and bigger deal to me to have this, because he was awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do the capsule and then we'll get deep into some Bruno.
Sounds good.
I tell you, in watching Flair yesterday on TBS for his last interview, which could be his last interview on Saturday night as an active wrestler, it really just brings back the memories of what this man has meant to professional wrestling. And it's certainly going to be sad not to see him there week after week.
It certainly is because, he's been with Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle, so many other greats for the baseball. And those shoes are pretty hard to fill, and maybe they never will be, but at least we got to see him while he was in his prime. And he's still going out relatively in his, looking just as good as he did when he was going strong back in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
All righty, well, that's going to lead things off with the capsule, of course. World Championship Wrestling presents 100% Wrestling History tonight in Detroit's Joe Louis Arena as they present Hulk Hogan versus Nature Boy Ric Flair in a loser must retire match as their main event. Many wrestling insiders see tonight's match as the Nature Boy's swan song to the sport, at least as a wrestler, or at least until next summer. Other top contests on the Halloween Havoc lineup includes the Honky Tonk Man vying for Johnny B. Bad's television title, and Steve Austin gets another crack at regaining the United States Championship. He lost to Hacksaw Jim Duggan at Fall Brawl. The 8-match card is expected to draw the largest buy rate of all time of any of the company's pay-per-views. And looking ahead to WCW's next major presentation, their November 16th Clash of Champions on TBS. Expect a main event of Hulk Hogan and Sting opposite the tag combination of Avalanche, a.k.a. Earthquake, and a still undecided Masked Man. Also in a rematch from the Havoc, expect Johnny B. Bad and the Honky Tonk Man. Well, they'll be mixing it up. And also expect to see Sensuous Shuri to be managing Steve Austin by then. And watch for Harlem Heat's new manager, Johnny Attitude, to surface on a special. Last Monday night in Memphis, Tennessee's Mid-South Coliseum, approximately 4,000 fans turned out largely to see Sid Vicious defending his USWA Unified belt against The Undertaker. The record crowd, paying $23,000, saw the time as Sid was being tombstoned by Paul Bearer's Undertaker at near the 9-minute mark. The Spellbinder, one of Vicious's friends in the USWA, came to his aid at the 2 count by the referee, which had Sid disqualified, and so far there's no word on a rematch being announced. In World Wrestling Federation news, there are reports of Shawn Michaels suffering a broken right hand in Baltimore, Maryland a week ago Friday. That was October the 14th, during a match with head shrinker Fatu. Michaels, who co-holds the WWF Tag Team title with Diesel, did appear the following day in his partner's corner wearing what is being described as a bandage or cast covering from his hand up until his elbow. At last Monday's TV tapings in Burlington, Vermont in a King's Court, Jerry Lawler introduced his third midget partner for a Survivor Series showdown against Doink and his 3 closest little friends. First there was Queasy, then Sleazy. Now there's Cheesy to acknowledge. In other related Federation news, the Royal Rumble on January 21st will be in Tampa, Florida's Sun Dome, and there's talk of the USWA's Brian Christopher, Jerry Lawler's son, in following Jeff Jarrett's trail and being welcome aboard from Memphis to the WWF. In checking other promotional news, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert has been added to Dennis Carluzzo's November 19th card in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, for participation in the NWA tournament, which published reports are labeling a Smoky Mountain Wrestling bill. Carluzzo will be running cards on 3 consecutive nights, November 17th through the 19th, leading up to the tournament. And speaking of SMW, the Gangsters are the promotion's new tag champions. Speaking of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Scott Norton of Oregon made his WWF debut a couple weeks back in Sunrise, Florida, losing in the opener to Bob Holly. And while on the topic of Sunrise, Florida, Butcher Paul Vachon's eldest daughter, Luna, will be tying the knot with fellow wrestler David Heath in Sunrise on Halloween night. Finally, in wrestling history, 14 years ago this Wednesday, that's October 26, 1982, in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Chief Jay Strongbow and Jules Strongbow won the WWF Tag Team straps for a second time in 4 months by defeating Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito. For the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, I'm Don Lava reporting. Capsule time, 1:15.
Another jam-packed week covered by Mr. Liable.
Yeah, I get a kick out of them still. Was there anything in there that stood out to you? Because it kind of seemed business as usual stuff. Nothing.
The midgets.
The midgets was interesting.
Sleazy, cheesy, wheezy.
Queasy.
Yeah, so that was just ridiculous. I had a chuckle on that.
Yeah. I mean, this wasn't... we're only a couple years away because this is building the Survivor Series, obviously. What was it? 2 years prior to this is when they had the Gobbledy Gooker. So you guys probably just...
One of the worst things ever.
Oh, no, it's kind of legendary.
It is legendary. Well, it was ridiculous. Because they were promoting that thing on TV every week, like Who's in the Egg. And some of the earlier pro wrestling spotlights before you were involved, it was week after week. Who's in the egg? Who's in the egg? Who's in the egg? Those are the callers. Who's in the egg?
So insane.
And then, it was so anticlimactic.
Well, not to go back too many years ago and really dig into it, but who could it have been? It's an egg. There was no win on the other side. You couldn't have.
Wasn't it 1990 that happened?
I thought it was 92, if I'm honest.
Was it 92? Was it 92?
I thought it was 92, but it could have been 90, 91. Because it was when, it might have been 91, because it was Undertaker's debut the same day. And he thought he was going to be the Eggman.
That's what we're figuring out. It was going to be like Mark Calloway coming out of the egg. A lot of people were speculating on that.
He said he was afraid he was going to come out and be an Eggman. But, I can't imagine what it could have been that would have... There was no win. No one's coming out of that egg, and you're not getting a Chainsaw Charlie out of an egg. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It kind of had to be a big turkey. because it also wasn't going to keep living on. Whatever comes out of the egg is done.
Yeah.
Like, nothing's coming out of the egg and having a long career.
There's even a Wikipedia page for the Gobbledy Gooker, actually.
There's a new action figure of the Gobbledy Gooker.
Is there really? It was 1990. Yeah, it was 1990.
90.
There you go. The Gobbledy Gooker.
Yeah, they just released a good figure for it. He's in some of the video games. It's amazing. But I'm just saying, a few years removed from the egg, we have a few dwarves.
Yeah.
It's not as bad anymore.
You got clowns. You got little clowns.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of stuff going on. None of it was pleasing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's no surprise that Bruno doesn't watch a lot at this point.
Yeah.
Which he gets into. I didn't pull the clip where he talks about a ceremony coming up because it was all really matter of fact. They're going to be honoring him with the Italian Americans.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have a dinner with the president. The president was currently in the Middle East. But he's going to make it in time. It was a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, you guys are talking logistics. When do you get in? When do you leave? What time's the banquet? Like, it was really that, which was interesting. But not a lot of meat on the bone.
I always like that. Bruno Sammartino. Me and Hillary are so happy that he's joining us at the White House.
I'm going to keep looking because I couldn't find it, but he said that he was meant to share a table with the Clintons. So there should be a picture of all of them sat together somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep digging. We'll see. I don't know. If anybody's listening to this, I either found it or I didn't. So if you see it,
you'll find out soon enough, won't we?
But you do start getting into the conversation with Bruno, and you ask him kind of what he's up to. He goes from, what he's told you, he doesn't really follow the product anymore, and this is kind of what he talks about.
Mm-hmm.
You have totally divorced yourself from the professional wrestling business, I understand now.
Well, John, yes, I have. I loved wrestling. I spent a lot of years in it, and I just loved the game and so forth. But as you know, and I think a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, know, I've been kind of upset at a lot of the things that have taken place in the past 10 years or so with well, I don't want to rehash, but all the first of all, the drug situation, and also the bizarreness of it all. As far as I'm concerned, they've gotten complete away from professional wrestling. It's become, as I've said many times, as far as I'm concerned, nothing but an ugly cartoon show. And I just resent what they've done to this, what I considered a great game, made up of a lot of good people through the years, and I had a lot of. I just had such a good feeling about being a wrestler and to be the best that I could be, as many others, in years ago. But today, they've taken so much out of it, and what they brought into it, I just cannot believe it. There's a fellow here, and I'll tell you his name because you probably know him. This Mark Madden. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know Mark.
Yeah, he wrote an article here, and he's saying that how great Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair are and what they've done for wrestling. Well, the people like him, it's proof that they have no clue about history of professional wrestling, because wrestling has never been in a worse state than it is right now. And when you're talking, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say right out, when you talk about people like Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, if they're such high items, how come is it that they're wrestling each other all over the place and nobody's going out to see them? They've been bombing everywhere that they go. I mean, it's because people are turned off because they don't like it, they don't buy it, they don't see it as a sport anymore. They see it as nothing but a bad cartoon show. And wrestling, tragically, it's the arenas here, like here in Pittsburgh, they never draw more than 2,000-3,000 people. Madison Square Garden, you remember, John, we used to be there 12 to 15 shows a year, and we used to mostly pack it. How often do they go in there now? What kind of crowds they draw? So when you talk about Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, these guys be such great attractions, I'm sorry, but they're not, because they're not drawing crowds anywhere. Am I wrong here?
Well, certainly in today's day and age, there are no sellouts anywhere in professional wrestling because of everything that's gone on in the business the last 10 years. You consistently sold out Madison Square Garden month after month after month. To Ric Flair's credit, however, Bruno, I must say that I do respect what he has done inside the ring. And tonight's match, him leaving the wrestling business, so to speak, is very, very sad. For someone like me who's been following the business. I grew up with you, and I went to many shows in Boston Garden, Madison Square Garden, Philadelphia. The crowds were hotter. The crowds were more enthusiastic. The crowds were into it. I have not seen that type of crowd reaction in many years. And I have to credit yourself for being, the true living legend in the wrestling business, because you certainly went out there all over the Northeast and all over the world, and haven't seen quite a reaction to any wrestler as the fans gave you.
Well, I just feel bad that the fans feel as they do about wrestling, but it's not the fans' fault because it's what they've done to wrestling. And the reason why I blame some wrestlers, it's because they've participated in this nonsense with promoters. And why have they not rebelled against them? You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that throughout my wrestling career, everything wasn't perfect, but many a time I had many battles with promoters who I felt wanted to do things that I felt was a detriment to professional wrestling. I loved the game, and I did my part, as many others did, to try to protect the game, to keep it as good as much of a sport as possible. And when some promoters would go a little bizarre, some of the what I call the tough guys, they would stand against them, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to pick on people like Flair and some of the other people, but I'm saying that there's a lot of nonsense that's been going on, and I'm disappointed that these named guys, especially people like Flair, who's been around a long time, who knew what it was like years ago, that they didn't make more of a stand. Instead of participating with this nonsense, that they should have fought against it.
The man.
He was pretty sure-headed. Yeah.
Yes. And he made a lot of good points. I mean, he did. The Flair thing, I kind of disagree with him a little bit on. But he was so adamant about distancing himself. And he was right. I mean, the business had changed in so many ways. It really did.
Now, you've obviously seen a lot more wrestling than I did during that era. I've always felt like Flair was kind of one of the early silly bump type guys.
Yeah,
maybe he's not. Was he?
Well, he was a silly bump guy, but he was so good in his ring work and with his promos and drawing heat, where Bruno was just kind of like, that was it. Get in the ring, do your thing, good on a promo, but not crazy bumps. Flair was a little bit more acrobatic, and he could flip, and he could do this, and he had the blonde hair, and he had the respect of a lot of the fans because he was such a good worker. It transitioned, it was an era, and then Flair comes in, and obviously Hogan, and that's when things really got turned around. But then again, wrestling became very popular and became cyclical in regard to its popularity, where Bruno had this, it was consistent. No. It was believable.
Yeah.
The suspension of disbelief was always there with a Bruno show or any wrestling from back in the 70s and up until 84.
And I wonder if that's part of Bruno's beef with Flair, is that like that delayed bump and everything. It feels like Hogan and Flair were almost like pinnacles of two different types of big wrestling, but also wrestling you could see right through.
Yeah.
Where Bruno, you couldn't see through.
No.
And I wonder if it was all like, oh, you can do it. You can be the cartoon character that Hogan is, where he's super powered and sells nothing and always wins and then does the wag and all the fan interaction stuff. And then you have the Flair, whose work rate, but also you can see right through because he's bumping in a way that people wouldn't bump in if it was actually happening. So I wonder if his whole thing was all like, I can see through you both. You're both cartoons, like just mad at him.
I think that's a good analogy. That's how he probably felt.
You think?
Yeah.
It's the most I can come up with because
very astute.
I mean, I like both of what they've given and stuff, but both of the guys where it's like, yeah, I can't watch every Ric Flair match, you know, like because there was a time where it's like, okay, it's a little cartoony, but
Yeah, and it's it was very. It was almost like the same match every time.
yep,
Same
and
kind of
that's
spots.
yeah.
You knew he
So
was going to run into the turnbuckle, flip himself over, and walk on the ring apron. You know that was going to happen every match. The climbing of the ropes and him getting tossed and landing on his hip. I mean, this was stuff that would be in every match, and of course the chops to the chest.
yeah,
Those are staples. The figure four. Bruno,
Hogan too.
yeah, Hogan
had
too, but
his
Bruno had a different kind of style. Even though Bruno was more broad than he was a technical wrestler anyway, but based on who the opponent was, he would sometimes try to wrestle scientifically in the beginning, like against a Koloff or like an Georgie Animal Steel. It would be just kind of like, all right, let's just go right at it. And Spiros Arion had a combination of both when he had that 4-match series with Arion at the Garden. It sold out every show, spilled over into closed circuit. So Bruno was just this believable guy that would kind of work the matches depending on who the opponent was. But it was the bear hugs, it was the arm drags, it was the arm bars, it was and then the punching and the kicks, and he sold really well, and he took really good bumps when he would fly out of the ring. And that was the one thing, covering it from ringside, when you knew they were running the ropes, you knew that there was a chance that Bruno's going to come flying out on you. And it happened to me that one time where he was wrestling Koloff, and it's on videotape somewhere where he, Koloff hit him, he landed right on me. Just like flattened me. But that was also the time where, I was called to the back, and I never spoke to Bruno before after his match, and he had someone come get me to make sure I was okay.
Did you talk to him in the back at that point?
Yeah, that was the first time I ever spoke to him.
How old were you then?
That was in 70. I was under 20. I think I was 18 or 19.
Okay. Because you even mentioned here how you were trying to get in since you were 14. So I knew you'd been going since you could get in.
Yeah, this was when I was a photographer. This, all that stuff happened in 70. I got my photographer's pass actually in 75. Or actually was there next to Napolitano and Bill Apter and those guys. I was in 75 and I was 18.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, he seemed like a really good dude to the fans and stuff. Like he even talks about it. I mean, I don't want to blow or spot if we have it in there, but he talks about how he doesn't like charging for autographs and stuff.
No, he would not do it. That was one thing. And he wouldn't even stay in the same room when I did my conventions with everybody else because we were selling autographs of everybody else, and he refused.
Yeah. He just didn't think it was right to do.
No, but
he was happy to do it.
He was happy to do it. Yeah, he loved it. He loved seeing all the fans, but he would always say, sell whatever you want, sell whatever pictures you want, whatever you want to do. But I'm not charging anyone for my autograph. I'll sign anything and everything they got. I'm like, okay. I respect it.
That's cool. When you got to the back, did you get to take some pictures of him back there?
Oh, I always, but I was always too shy even when I got my press pass, I was too shy to talk to this guy. I just couldn't even bring myself to come up to him. And that was it was just a short little thing. How you do, I just want to make sure you're okay. You got to watch when we're, I was like, I just wasn't paying attention. And I got slammed, and I really didn't talk to him I didn't really talk to him ever, at length until Pro Wrestling Spotlight debuted in '89 when I did that first big interview with him. But as a kid, I was like starstruck with him even as a photographer. But we would be allowed in the back, and we would take pose shots, and he would pose for us. But the other guys, Napolitano, Apter, they all would, Frankie Amato, the other guys that were back there would talk to him, and I'd be there with my microphone capturing it, but I wouldn't, I was too nervous to talk to him. And that was with a lot of them in the 70s. When I first got in and got backstage access, I would be a little gun shy on that stuff because I was like, I couldn't even believe I was back there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I feel like too that the difference, because we're watching the shifting of it all. I mean, obviously not in this moment, but the shifting of the Flairs to Hogans from the Brunos, it feels like it goes from a move set, right? Because you can have the moves that you do to a spot set where now these are the spots that I do. And I feel like that angered him too. This wasn't like, hey, I know how to do these moves effectively, so I do them in my matches, versus this is a sequence of which I do things that look a certain way and I want to do that sequence. So it was like the beginning of the get my shit in kind of book.
Yeah. It was all of that. But you notice every time I've talked, he still would never really talk about the business outside of being kayfabe in a lot of ways. He never would talk about how he was supposed to win or how he won this or anything about it being predetermined. It was really never part of our conversations.
No, even then there was a fan who calls in and asks him what types, like who were some of his better opponents and what kind of matches did he like. And he started talking about, versus this guy, I had to get a little more technical to get him down. And this guy, I was able, but it wasn't like they discussed it. It was like, it was necessity to be that, to win.
He kept that close to the vest literally until he died. He might have opened up more towards the latter part of his life, but he would never really expose the business.
Yeah. Badass. And I like that he holds a lot of those guys accountable for the change of the business, saying like, because right after this, you say, well, Vince rules with an iron hand. And then he was like, yeah, but he can't rule anyone if they walk, And then that's when you guys talk about how there's no union and they're still not going to unionize and all that. But he holds a lot of the talent as accountable as anyone else for actually following through on bad ideas, which is a tough spot for, I think, anyone to be in any industry where you're not the guy.
Yeah. I'm going to keep Bruno right over here.
Yeah. I like how the bronze statue even gives him a hairy chest.
That's right. There it is. I got this on sale from the WWE store a couple of years ago. I think it was like $10.
Worth it.
Totally worth it. Doggone it.
He does hold everyone accountable, though, and then you do ask him, is there anything they can do to turn the business around? And I thought it was an interesting response, so we got that right here.
It's really, really sad to see the way the business has turned out. And in your opinion, is there anything that can be done at this stage of the game to perhaps turn it all around and to bring wrestling back to where it used to be years ago?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I tell everybody else. The only salvation that professional wrestling has, the only salvation, is for Vince McMahon to go out of business, Ted Turner to go out of business, to stay without wrestling for a couple of years, and then for some people would-be promoters who respect and love the game, to get back into the old days of doing local promotions, like there used to be, whether it be the Florida area, the Minnesota area, the Northeast like we had here, and but start clean, get away from all. Let's learn the valuable lesson from everything that's happened the past 10 years, and let's get back to basic with some good athletes that can go out there and can be shown, but can be above all, good athletes, and give the people restore some faith in wrestling to where people can like it and love it and support it. And the only way that's going to happen, like I said, is if people like McMahon and even Turner, if theirs and their ideas and their styles completely disappear from the game. Only then I believe that the game's got a chance down the road to come back by getting a rebirth, a fresh start, and completely different. It's got to have a completely different look than what's out there right now.
I should have asked him about Herb Abrams.
Yeah, what do you think about Herb? Herbo Turbo, Mr. Electricity.
Bruno, got involved with him for well over a year.
He did work with them, right? The first year?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. He was an announcer.
Mr. Electricity.
Yeah. He and Albano came in together. Captain Lou and Bruno.
It's so crazy, the people who worked with him so early on, too. But you also do see a shift in Herbo after a bit.
Yeah.
But he always got good names on it, which is just crazy. I don't know. I actually just rewatched that Dark Side the other day because your face is the thumbnail. And my fiance was all like, yeah. My fiance was like, hey. And I was like, hey, let's watch it. You haven't seen this one. And so.
Yeah, that was a crazy episode.
Yeah. Mr. Electricity. Insane. But I mean, he was right. It wasn't going to change unless Vince and Turner both went out of business. And
that was
true.
Yeah.
Because it didn't change and they stayed in business. You know? And even now that Vince is no longer in charge of the creative stuff, people are saying they see and feel a change in the WWE now, even. Like, it's just interesting.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next year in that company, especially now that even NXT is moving to the CW. That was big. And that was where NWA was supposed to be on until that cocaine angle with
I cannot tell what NWA is doing.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of really negative publicity now on them with the CW deal. And now, how did WWE sneak in there, get $5 million or something for rights? I don't know, whatever the number was. I don't know for sure. But with NXT debuting on the CW, that's huge.
It truly makes it a third entity. If you're going to have 3 shows on 3 networks, that really creates the divide.
Yeah. And
I was actually surprised, though, just because they use so much Raw talent back and forth in NXT. I thought they for sure were going to stay together.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, that's what is that, next year? And still, Raw's got to find their new home if they're not going to be on USA Network anymore. They're going to have to find a new home for that show too.
Yeah. Yeah, that cocaine angle was so weird.
Yes, I can't believe that Billy allowed that to happen.
Yeah, I don't know what. Because they also pre-tape everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Anytime something comes on, people are like, oh, I can't believe they snuck that on. It's like, no, editors watched that and said, yeah, keep it.
Yeah, who was supposed to be the voice of reason there? Say, hey, you can't do this.
I feel like they haven't gotten good publicity outside of Cardona going over there since the pandemic.
Yeah, it's been challenging for them to make any headway at all.
Yeah, it's a shame. Let's see. And then this is when you pop on Donnie.
Yes,
Donnie gets to throw in his. He made a little tribute, like we've heard.
Donnie, are you there?
Yes, I am, and I think, Bruno, I respect what you were saying, and I think to throw my own 2 cents in there, I think one of the things that probably could help wrestling a lot, or what you alluded to, is going back to wrestling being a wrestling business, not a television business putting out wrestling, because so many people in television maybe aren't expertise on wrestling. But I did prepare a little commentary here, I thought, for some of the newer listeners, to give them an idea of just how important the name Bruno Sammartino is to wrestling. So here we go, and I hope you enjoy it, Bruno. Bruno Sammartino, those 2 words unquestionably brought honor, integrity, and perhaps the most importantly, respect to his professional athletic career. When entertaining his audience was implied, not repeatedly banged over their heads by promoters. His ring wardrobe was simple, a pair of boots and trunks, as was his in-ring mission to be the best at what he did at all times. The level of pride put into each contest was well received by the wrestling public in giving them their ticket money's worth, with the proof being in their patronizing Worldwide Wrestling Federation bills in which he headlined month after month in the arenas. No gimmicks were needed to get Bruno over with his audiences. What they saw in the Italian strongman was what they had served up, an exchange of holds and wrestling knowledge. There was a manager, Arnold Skolin, who presented himself equally professional as Sammartino, but never was forced to be the focal point of a match to aid Bruno's standing with the public. Arguably the greatest consistent drawing card in the history of Madison Square Garden, Bruno represented the working class, one who never appeared to have forgotten from where he came and who buttered his bread. He was one of the main players who made wrestling, particularly the McMahon-run WWF, cool long before the pay-per-view concept was conceived. The pillar of strength to wrestling's old generation, if one is acknowledged, never traded believability in between the ring ropes for dyed hair, a clown's nose, or a garbage man's identity. The statistics have been told countless times, and deserving so. It was on May 17, 1963, that Bruno won his first of 2 world titles from Buddy Rogers. Then it was Stan Stasiak on December 10, 1973, also in Madison Square Garden, that another reign of athleticism at its finest revved up once again. From the Jack Vanskys to the unknowns as Miguel Torres to the greats of Killer Kowalski and Ivan Koloff, Bruno fought all the same at the same level against any challenger. With not enough words nor time available to express the multitudes of positive contributions made to wrestling by Bruno, to borrow a line from Muhammad Ali, which surely he wouldn't object, simply put, you were the greatest. The living legend is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Very nice tribute there, Don.
Wow. Donnie?
Yes.
I say, my goodness, thank you so very, very much.
Yeah. Donnie did a good job. But Bruno transcended. He just was so special, especially in the Italian-American community. When I was a little boy, I don't know if I've shared this. I probably did because it was, one of those regrets of my life. I was a little kid, my grandmother, my dad's mom, my grandma Dorothy, very, immigrant from Italy, came over from Sicily. And I'd go visit them and my grandparents, and my grandfather had passed. And I remember Grandma Dorothy was like, I'm going out and I got to buy some, vegetables. I'm going down to Orchard Street, which is, was, a shopping. You could get anything there. And she would go down there and buy fruits. And she asked me to come with her one morning. And I was like, nah, Grandma, I'm just going to watch some TV. And she was going with one of her lady friends, and a couple, 3 hours later, she comes back and she goes, I met Bruno Sammartino. I was like, what? She was down on Orchard Street buying fruit, and he was there picking fruit out. I guess he had a show at the garden or whatever it was. He was in New York City, and she was like, she got very excited and went up to him, oh, Bruno, Bruno, Bruno. And she started screaming, and I didn't even know that my grandmother knew who he was. And then she told me that, he was shushing her. Please, signore, signore, please, please, please. Too many people will come to me, So that was kind of cool. But if you're an Italian American in the 60s, you knew who Bruno was. He was iconic. He was a hero. He was somebody that the Italian Americans could be very proud of. At least a certain sector. And on the other side, oh, Mr. Gotti, Mr. Gotti. So different factions. But anyway, my grandmother was, and that day I regret because I could have picked fruit with Bruno.
She's all, do you want to go get fruit with me? And like, no, I don't want to do something lame like that. And then she's like, Bruno was there. And you're like, oh! Of course. He's always there when I'm not.
Yeah.
You're like kind of like a child, like a Charlie Brown kind of moment.
It was a Charlie Brown moment.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's cool. And that was also obviously before like your grandma would have even thought to get like an autograph or anything like that. She would have not that stuff. I mean, later on, you know, all, but
yeah,
just kind of one of those things where in that era, meeting someone was enough. It was cool enough. Oh my God, I got to meet them, like now people want a little piece, and I get it.
And for the life of me, I didn't think she knew who the heck Bruno Sammartino was, because she never talked about Bruno Sammartino to me when I was a kid until that day.
So crazy. That's the other thing too, is it was so big. And my grandfather grew up in like Boston area. And I had asked him if he'd ever, even as a kid, like watched wrestling or paid attention to any of it, just anything. He's kind of like, no. And I was like, it was so big. Like, how did you avoid it at a certain point? You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. But it's interesting for sure. So,
Yeah, Bruno was huge in Boston too, in the North End, the Italian section. My goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. But I like Donnie saying it's got to get away from being a television business to a wrestling business.
Yes. What do you think, Bruno? Doggone it, I agree.
Yeah. And it was also interesting too, because Bruno had made mention that he wanted Turner and Vince to go away so the business could go back to what it was. Like it needs to be less national and more localized.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just neat. It's weird. You
Seemed
just
like
wonder.
centuries ago. Other than
Yeah.
and still just and everything has changed so much. It's just a different industry. It's a different business.
And it seems like every decade or so, there's a major shift that changes the very nature of the business, you know? And I feel like we're through that again. So let's see. Oh, and then Donnie talks to him. It's funny because Bruno says that. Thank you so much. And then Donnie just rattles off. Like, because he's talking to Bruno. Like, it's what I meant. Like this, and this part I saved for the Patreons to listen to. But the way he sits there and goes, "Oh my God, I've always appreciated you. You don't understand that. I was like 14 and 15 and going to the Garden, and how he always made time for the fans, and he
Hanging
just
out at the
rattling.
hotel, probably outside, waiting outside in the cold, and trying to get a glimpse and get an autograph.
Yeah, and Bruno always made time, and just really cool. He does ask him in '77 what with the business now having pay-per-views, what does he think that Morales and Bruno would have done? And obviously he says he would have done great business. He also goes, Zabisco and Shea Stadium would have been big because they were turning away thousands of people if they could have paid to watch. Kind of neat to think. Donnie asks him about the Hall of Fame.
One other thing, Madison Square Garden, which was your home, they have a Hall of Fame, and your name is not in there yet. This past year, the World Wrestling Federation came out with their Hall of Fame, and they had some, I would think, for what it's worth, they had some deserving people such as Freddie Blassie, who's been around for a long time, Monsoon. If next year, hypothetically speaking, they had asked you, they were going to honor you to be into their Hall of Fame, to come to their banquet. Speaking now, what do you think your response would be?
My response would be a powerful no. As long as the WWF is run by Vince McMahon and run in the manner that's been run, like in the past 10 years, I absolutely do not want to be associated with them in any way, shape, or form. It's funny, a lot of people thought that maybe my feelings were hurt that I wasn't inducted, and they are mistaken, because I really didn't want my name associated with that, because I'm against everything that they've done since Vince McMahon Jr. took over in the last 10 years. So, no, I absolutely wouldn't have accepted that, and I would not accept next year or any other year, as long as the situation is as is.
Well, just speaking, recently I was at the Cauliflower Alley banquet in Springfield, Massachusetts, and your peers, Tony Parisi was there, speaking of you, Billy Darnell, Elio DiPaolo, a lot of people brought up the name Bruno, and perhaps in the near future they will have one of their banquets in the Pittsburgh area. I know there's a lot of former wrestlers there where they could honor you, and I think being honored by your peers probably will mean more than some company-run Hall of Fame. But as I said, Bruno, a lot of great memories, and those are things that you can't buy. It's just I was happy to be there when it occurred, and just seeing Madison Square Garden filled all the time, that's something I'll probably never see again, but I'm glad I was part of it, and I thank you for it.
Well, I thank you, believe me, very, very much, Don. It's because people like you that made me what I became in the game, because of people that were as supportive as you are.
All righty, Bruno. Have a good show, John.
Okay, thanks, Donnie.
Thank you.
Donnie got his 2 cents in and more.
You got it in. Got it in. I was looking at the Madison Square Garden Walk of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even see him listed. I don't know if he ever made it in.
Really?
Yeah.
Vince McMahon did. That's a travesty.
Seems a little weird, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the Walk of Fame and not the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah, there's I believe there was a Hall of Fame years ago there, but it could be a Walk of Fame or some type of tribute at the Garden. But the fact that Bruno's not there is
It was established in 92, yeah.
crazy.
And
it took him, 20 years later or 18 and a half years later to be finally accepting the WWE's invitation, and that had to be brokered through Triple H.
Yep. Yeah, and it looks like, I'm just looking to see, because I was like, when did he go in? And I can't find him on there. But Vince McMahon went in 2003 on the Walk of Fame there.
Oh, Vince Jr. or Senior?
It just says Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Shows Vincent Kennedy McMahon when I hover, so yeah. Junior.
Don't call me Junior, pal.
It's all of it's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, really interesting. Donnie and Bruno.
Hey, Donnie, just like I did, revere the man, and even though Donnie spoke to him before at my conventions or whatever, and Donnie's probably been on asking questions previously, for him to pay that tribute to him was really nice, and it was just kind of a cool get to bring him back on after he hadn't appeared on the show in a while. So to have him back on was really special, especially as we were winding down the show.
It was nice because not only were you winding down, but you brought him on to celebrate him.
Yes.
He was being honored in something. This wasn't about tearing anything down.
No.
It wasn't him calling in because he was upset and wanted you to know what was going on. This was strictly like, hey, you're about to be honored to meet the president. We want to celebrate that.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a different air,
Yes, certainly was.
You talk about LNS doing their Magic Con and about how you're trying to get Cactus to go to the show, to go to Magic Con. Do you think you got him to do that?
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. All right. And then Bruno stays on to take a few calls. He hangs. It's just kind of cool too. And the way that he even, thanks Donnie, I don't know. I just think about it, and I think that a couple of your heroes, Bruno and Freddie, being who they are, and then knowing that by the end of their lives, they very much knew you. Like, that's cool. You're friends of theirs, Bruno does take a phone call from, was there an issue with Steve from West Hampstead?
Steve from West Hampstead was always one of our regular callers. In this particular case, it was a Steve from Hempstead imposter. It wasn't the same guy.
Okay.
Because I know I was suspicious when he said Steve from West Hampstead, and it wasn't the voice that I was normally accustomed to. Because I don't recall anybody else, Steve from West Hampstead, calling in other than the guy that was one of our favorite callers in the history of the show.
Yes. That explains it. So I'm going to play this because this is Steve from West Hampstead calling in, followed by Eddie calling in. Okay. And what happens with Steve, I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
You worked it because you didn't want Bruno to know, but I could hear it in your voice. And I was like, John did that on purpose.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I don't know why. So I'm glad you said that now.
Let's
but here we go.
And we're going to go right to the telephones, and we will speak to Steve from West Hampstead as our first caller today.
John, how you doing? This is Steve from West Hampstead. Bruno.
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry. Let's go to our next line. Eddie from New Jersey, you're next.
Hi, John.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
How's it going, Bruno?
Yes.
Hi, nice to be speaking to you.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm going to sound like Don Liable. You are the reason why I love wrestling so much.
Well, thank you.
Well, I was always too young to go to see you live, and I was just wondering, do you ever think of putting out a tape of like your greatest matches or something, so people who didn't get to see you live could get you on tape?
Well, you'd have to see, the problem with that is that I have no way of doing that. All my matches that I've ever had that were ever filmed, it was all handled and controlled by the promoters. I was never given any of those tapes or anything like that. The only thing I've ever seen of me wrestling is of stuff that they released. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
I have no excess of any of that stuff.
I remember it was the wrestling on Channel 9 at midnight, and I just flipping the channels one night. This is when I was little, and I saw you getting interviewed in a suit, and just caught my eye, and now the rest was history. I used to watch wrestling, and like I said, I was too young to go to the Garden, so every Tuesday morning I used to steal a newspaper from my neighbor and quickly turn to the sports section to see if you won or not.
Well, there was a time in the Garden that if you were, I believe the age, I'm not sure if it was 14 or 16 years of age,
14.
because of the fire laws, that you couldn't even go into the Garden.
Right.
I mean, that's changed, of course, now for a number of years.
Uh-huh.
But at one time, yeah. So in wrestling in the Garden, we had really all adults. I mean, there were no kids there because of the fire laws.
Right. I heard it just to be crazy. They're insane.
Well, it was great. It was a great feeling because unlike today where they have the phony crowd reactions that they tape and that for television, that in those days the audiences really used to get into it, and it was great feeling, in that ring when those people used to get into it so much. I mean, it was just one heck of an experience.
Now, who's the opponent you really liked to wrestle or really had a great match with? Did you really?
Well, the different types. For example, Ivan Koloff was great. I think I had great matches with him. In a different type of a match was Killer Kowalski, because I liked Kowalski because he was in such fantastic shape all the time that when you went with him, it was a non-stop type situation. He was like a machine, and that was a great challenge for me to wrestle guys like him at that pace. But then, of course, the first scientific match, as Don Leibel, I believe it was, or John, talked about the match with Morales. That match went an hour, 17 minutes, and it was strictly pure scientific wrestling. So I loved that. But I liked Tanaka to wrestle him, Don Leo Jonathan, Ray Stevens. There were a lot of great guys that I had great matches with that I just wouldn't want to pick a one guy and say that was above all the rest,
Superstar. Graham.
Pardon?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham, how was he?
Yeah, Graham was good. I mean, I had some, I don't call it my greatest matches, but I had some pretty decent matches with him.
Yeah. Will you be doing any signings, book signings, or autograph shows lately? I like to meet you or get an autograph.
Well, these days, unless you're selling your autographs, they're not interested in you. And I, of course, refuse to sell autographs. So occasionally I still get asked to make an appearance here and there. But, but not as many as, not a whole lot. But where are you from?
Excuse me?
Where are you from?
I'm by Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay, well, I hope that one of these days, maybe I'll be around that area, and it'd be great to meet you.
Oh, same here, Bruno.
Okay, thanks for your call, Eddie. Yes, and Bruno, you were talking about the age limit being 14 and older to get into the Garden. The very first time I attempted to go to wrestling was back in 1967, and at that time I was not 14, and I never forget it. It was a night you and Gorilla Monsoon were going head-to-head at the old Madison Square Garden. I believe the match went to a 1 hour, 15-minute draw, and it broke my heart because we bought our tickets, went to the gate, and they wouldn't let us in.
Oh, boy. John, can you imagine in the last 10 years if they had lost like that where kids 14 and under couldn't go into an arena? What kind of a crowds would they have had?
It wouldn't have been too good, that's for sure.
Yes, heartbreak is a 10-year-old.
10?
I was 10 years old. I couldn't get in, yeah.
I thought you were like 12 or 13.
No. I was born in 57, so that was 67.
Oh.
I just turned 10, actually, because I think it was a February 67 show.
You must have been a very mature-looking 10-year-old for the guy to be like, yeah, I'll sell a kid a ticket.
Well, I convinced my father to take...
Yeah, but you're standing next to him.
My dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your dad asked for 2.
Well, we had not just ourselves, but one of his friends and his friend's son, who was my best friend at the time, and we took the sister as well, and she was only like 7 or 8, so there was actually 5. There was 3, 4. There was 5 of us. And then we got the tickets, and then when we went to come into the building, that's when the guy was like, oh, no, you can't get in. If it was just us without the girl, maybe, because she was much younger, who knows? But it was a heartbreaking thing, and my dad was pissed. And his friend was like, we came all the way here from Long Island for this. This is crazy.
That is nuts.
Very
I just think that, I think he got screwed on that deal there. I mean, the guy's sitting there selling tickets for people he sees has kids. He could have at least said, "Hey, just so you know, there's a 14 age limit." Then you would have.
Yeah, the box office should have let us know when we bought
Yeah.
those. We went to the box office to get the tickets, and then not being let in was really heartbreaking for a 10-year-old. Especially that, there were other matches. There were 6-man tags. Spiro Sarion was there, who was my favorite at the time, along with Bruno. And there was a match I remember. I'll tell you what I'm going to do as we're reminiscing. I'm going to take a look at the show because I have this book, you see. It's called Wrestling in the Garden. It has every Madison Square Garden show in here.
Wow.
From the early 1900s right through, I think it's like the last one. It goes right up until 2016.
Wow.
That's when it came out.
Who wrote it?
It was through Scott Teal, and that's Crowbar Press. And it's my Bible. When I do the Memories from Madison Square Garden show, this is kind of our Bible.
Yeah.
But that show that I attempted to go to, it was February 27th, 1967. The match was Bruno, and it was actually Monsoon beating Sammartino via countout. And the 6-man tag was Bobo Brazil, Armand Hussein, and Antonio Pugliese against Bill Miller, Crazy Luke Graham, and Baron Cicluna. Spiros Arion against El Toro Bull Ortega, the Friendly Ox Baker, against Tank Morgan. And the match I really wanted to see was an angle they did off the TV. Referee Jack Davis took on Smasher Sloan. Miguel Perez against Tony Nero. And then in the opening match, Lou Albano against Ricky Sexton. And it was 1967, February 27th. And they drew a house of $46,000 that night. So that was it. And I remember it, too, because in a couple issues later, a couple months later, in Wrestling World magazine, they had a photo feature on that night. So that brought back the bad memories. But it was like I could have been there that night.
I mean, kind of. You were out front. You definitely.
I was outside at the Old Garden. I never saw a match at the Old Garden. I would have loved to see a show at the Old Garden.
Oh, that was before they did the
new one, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
This was at the old Madison Square Garden.
It's a double bummer. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, with Steve, as soon as you hung up on him, you're like, hello. Well, let's go on to the next line.
Well, you knew right away. I could tell in his voice that he was ready to say something that was not going to be good.
Hey, Bruno.
Yeah. Yeah, this ain't Steve from West Hempstead. You're out of here.
Yeah, and you kayfabed Bruno.
Of course.
Steve, are you there? Well, let's go to the next line.
Yeah. Had to.
Yeah. But that was cool. That was cool. And like you said, he was really talking about the different style matches, but not talking about the guy's work rate.
Yeah.
So just neat. Someone asked him what's the deal with Bob Backlund. He says he's not watching, so he doesn't know. And you talk a little bit about it, and he kind of chuckles that McMahon got his way and made him a heel.
Mm-hmm.
Although Bruno couldn't see it in his mind. He goes, I don't see how he could be a heel. I think that's cool.
Yeah, it was so against the grain for Backlund.
Yeah. But at the same time, because I grew up on the heel Bob Backlund, I'm like, well, that's such a natural way to be if you're that way. Of course we're going to boo you. You're being a jerk.
Yeah.
Dominic Venanti called in twice this show.
Mm-hmm. He's calling a lot regularly, isn't he? He's like almost every week now. He's coming on.
Yeah. Yep. And I wonder if Tommy D put him up to it. Although he doesn't bring up Tommy D in this call.
Okay.
Dominic Valente is the next caller on line number 1. Dominic, you're on with Bruno Sammartino. Turn down your radio, Dominic. Dominic, you're next. Are you there? Are you there?
Okay. John, how you doing?
Good.
Hello?
Yes, you're on, Dominic.
Okay. Bruno, how you doing?
Hello, is this the Dominic that I know?
Yes, it is.
Hello, Dominic. How are you?
All right. How you been?
Okay.
Good. We were talking about awards before, and I figured I'd give you a call because you remember what happened in July when we gave you that plaque.
Well, I've said many a time. I was on a 3-hour radio show here in Pittsburgh, and they were talking about awards, and I mentioned that. I said that that to me meant more than any Hall of Fame because that came from the great fans, the fans who supported me and who cheered me on and who made me into a so-called, to use the word, star. So that meant an awful lot to me. Appreciated that.
Well, Bruno, you were proud to get it, and we was just as proud to give it to you. And we all sent our regards, Steve and Georgianne and Pete and everybody else that was involved in it. You know, we wish you all the best, Bruno, and you made wrestling what it is.
Well, thanks a lot, Dominic. It's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
Okay, Bruno. Take care. All the best.
You too, Dominic.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Lots of chirping there, too. I mean, I think there's something with the phone.
I think so. I also wonder, what was the award itself? They didn't...
It was probably just a fan-generated thing that he came up with. I don't remember specifically what it was.
Yeah, probably for his newsletter, I would bet.
His hotline.
His hotline.
That's still active today.
Yeah, so good. But I thought it was cool. And I thought that must have been cool for Dominic to just hear that. Bruno was like, is this the Dominic that I know? Like, that was cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Eddie from Manhattan calls in, says that he's deserving of any award that he gets, and that asked if Bruno watches AAA or NJPW or ECW, and what does he think about them? And Bruno's like, no, I don't watch anything. I watch football. Like, but that was it for Bruno on there.
All right, I'll take my little statue down now.
Yeah, get him out.
See you later, Bruno.
But just cool because you can hear it. I mean, I love that you guys held in such high regard, and it's evident.
Mm-hmm.
I just like it.
To this day,
yeah.
The memories will always be there.
And the more I learn about him, the more I do too. I told you my first Bruno autograph I gave away. I had got one online because it was like a pretty good deal for a trading card. It was, but there was this guy I worked with at the time who knew I was the wrestling guy and always wanted to talk about Bruno and just talked about going to MSG all the time and just seeing Bruno and just going there for Bruno and how much he hated Ivan Koloff and all that, and Nikolai. And I'd gotten this thing, and I just realized at a certain point that I had this card that was just going to sit with my cards, but that he didn't have any like Bruno memorabilia. And so I went in one day and I gave it to him.
Ooh.
And he was all like, no, he goes, you can't be serious. He goes, why would you give this to me? Like, this is a Bruno. And I was like, because it doesn't mean as much to me.
Right.
You know? And he couldn't believe it. He was like blown away. And he ended up telling me, I found out like a while later that he kept it on his like nightstand.
Wow.
It just kind of meant that much to me. He always wanted it out and to see it. And I ended up giving him a Bruno LJN that I'd come across at a toy shop too. And he was just like, oh.
You know, it was really interesting because it is a whole different scene. I mean, when I remember with the conventions, I mean, the fans would be there and they're getting autographs from so many of the performers that I booked for these things. But when it came to the Bruno table, when Bruno was signing, when people were lining up for him, it was a different vibe. It was kind of like this, we're meeting Bruno.
Yeah. Yeah, the connection he had with his fans runs deeper than most people.
Yeah.
And it was even evident when I gave that guy that card. I was like, oh, yeah, I came across this thing.
It's probably the deepest like fan love for a wrestler that might have ever existed for purists of pro wrestling.
Yeah. And it's just tied in with so much, like you said, with the area, the time, the even the ethnicity, the believability of it all.
Too. It was the older fans who would just kind of revere the guy because they grew up with him, and it was when they believed wrestling was real, and it was all of that. It was how much of a gentleman he was, and how kind he was, and how he respected you as much as you respected him, and he appreciated you as much as you appreciated him. So there's not a lot of that anymore. And there even wasn't a lot of that back when I was doing the conventions. It was new at the time. And I think the old timers, when I did these conventions, really appreciated it more. The guys even like Killer Kowalski and Nikolai Volkov and those other old timers that I had at these shows. I mean, it was just kind of special for them to hear how much the fans loved them.
Yeah, it's a different type of connection. I think the closest I ever got was probably Brett, where I almost blacked out. I couldn't believe I was meeting him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And like, I remember every second of it, you know? And I think a lot of it does with that nostalgia. But yeah, Bruno's that way for all you guys who grew up on that coast.
Yes.
And it's so cool, man. So I don't know. A little bit of a fandom rabbit hole, I suppose, but just it was really cool. And that being his last one on there with you, it couldn't have been more perfect.
Yeah, it was a good when I didn't know at the time that, you know, the show was going to be over in just a few months. But it was kind of poetic that Bruno's last appearance was us honoring him in this manner.
Yeah. Like, even if you had known, you would have still done this exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you would have brought him on to celebrate him anyways. Like, it's cool. You know, I love when stuff works out like that. Let's see. You end up having a few people on to promote all their meet and greets and conventions coming up. Tommy Fierro, Harvey from National Pastime. You talk about the tapes that Rob Feinstein has. Tommy Fierro is doing the Dennis Corluzzo one, and he's going to have Smoky Mountain Wrestling people over there, and I thought that was neat. Did Smoky Mountain and NWA end up working together?
Just really bringing some talent in because Carluzzo was so close to Jimmy Cornette.
Yeah, because I think they did. Because I think when the Smoky Mountain, when WWE brought in the Smoky Mountain Wrestling tag teams, I think they were the NWA tag team champions when they came in the 90s. So just kind of neat. Harvey was doing the Long Island Classic Sports Memorabilia Show, and he was having Bret Hart there, actually. So that was going to be cool. You bring some callers in. I didn't play this one just because the guy's call was so low. He had you on speakerphone, and it was really difficult. And I tried to like make it louder and sweeten it, and it just made it more corrupt. Didn't work. But it was really neat because he asked about Sting, but then he brings up that he read in an interview in Pro Wrestling Illustrated that Kevin Von Erich was in talks making a script for a Von Erich movie deal.
No kidding.
Yeah. And you said you had not heard that, but you believe that he absolutely should, and that there needs to be a movie about that family.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Given that as we record this now, the debut of Iron Claw was yesterday.
What do you mean? It's out? It's not out yet. Or
they just did this. They just did the showing.
It was a preview. It was a preview because this movie's not coming out till Christmas.
But they did the red carpet one in Texas with the Von Erichs and the official. I agree that it's probably not, but whatever that is, that red carpet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had the photo people. They had the Von Erichs. They had
I have a friend who was down, and I had a picture. A good buddy of mine presenting the boys now, the sons, and Kevin. Yeah. He's the one that's putting together the theater tour because Kevin is doing this theater tour now. They're going around the theaters for Q&As.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell him to come to Arizona.
Lunch. Yeah, I'm going to have lunch with my my buddy next week because he's a Nashville music business executive, and he's the one he's the one that's how I got Kevin to be on the show earlier this year. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on too, which I'm not at liberty to discuss when it comes to Von Erichs right now, but there's cool stuff. And when I was at the movie the other day, the full trailer of this film came out, like, the 3-minute trailer and the coming attractions, and it was freaking fabulous. Yeah. I honestly think that it's going to be an Oscar contender for next year. And nice. It looked amazing. And this was an extended preview, and they got it down spot on. Fritz Von Erich, Kerry, it's fabulous. I can't wait for it.
I'm excited. They were even giving out these like the little foam fingers, except it was the Iron Claw hand. They're giving out those. Had the little A24 in the corner.
My buddy. My buddy's probably down there right now for that.
Yeah. If they come through Arizona, I'll go.
The guy's name is JR too.
Yeah.
Nice. Not Jim Ross, but yeah, we get together quite often these days. So, but I'm happy. I mean, he's like, he is not a wrestling. He was never in the wrestling business. He was always a big radio programmer. Started his career in Texas and programmed country radio in Texas, and then moved to Nashville to program Sirius XM and oversaw all the country music channels there. And left that position about a year ago. And all of a sudden, he reached out to me about Kevin Von Erich about a year ago, and he knew somebody, hooked him up with Von Erich, and that's how it all happened. And now he's kind of managing not only Kevin, but Kevin's kids.
So cool. And
Kevin's kids are out of their MLW contract now, so it's not going to surprise people when they turn up somewhere in 2024.
And I think now's the time. I mean, you saw they just put out Pillman just showed up on NXT, and I almost feel like that's a year too late. Like, I feel like that he really should have been getting this push from the moment the Dark Side of the Ring had come out.
Yeah, and they should have called him. They should call him Brian Pillman Jr. Not what he's being called. I mean, that's kind of that defeats the purpose in a lot of ways. But the Von Erich legacy, I mean, it's when they land where they land, and I'm not 100% sure if a deal has been consummated or not for these kids. It would be really neat because timing-wise, with this film coming out, it could be a good situation with whatever wrestling promotion decides to pull the trigger on bringing them in.
Yep,
they deserve their shot.
And they're good, and they're nice. They're nice people. I've gotten a chance to meet them, and all of them have been great.
Yeah, well, I wish them the best, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, I can't wait for that movie.
Yeah, 29 years ago you asked for it, so here it comes.
And here it is.
Yeah, just like that. So you bring on Meltzer to talk about Flair, and this is the beginning of that, and then we'll take it from there. Oh, wait.
Get another prop.
There you go. There you go.
This is for our YouTube audience. And he's not tall enough, so I can't actually put him in the frame. Bruno is much bigger, you see.
Do you have a feather boa you could wear like Flair did?
No, I actually not a fan of feather boas. No.
Surprisingly. Believe it or not.
I could put on a La Parka mask if you want. That has nothing to do with it. I got a La Parka mask recently.
Let's see if you bring up La Parka, because you might have.
No, I don't think so.
But here you go. This is Meltzer coming on talking about Hogan and Flair.
Okay.
Hey, we are back, and on the line with us, the editor and publisher of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, direct from Campbell, California, Mr. Dave Meltzer, who joins us today. Dave.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, John?
I'm hanging in there. Big night tonight in the wrestling business. Big week.
Big next month.
Yeah, it's lots of things coming up in just 2 weeks. You got the AAA IWC WCW co-promoted pay-per-view. First time Lucha Libre has ever been on pay-per-view. So there's lots of things going on, Dave. But first and foremost, tonight in Detroit, Michigan, Hulk Hogan against Ric Flair, and career versus career. Will Flair be there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I think that all these rumors that got started this week were really overblown. There was something. I mean, he and Eric Bischoff, I guess on Monday had what's the deal? They had an impasse which lasted, I think, all of one day and was settled immediately. I mean, Bischoff and WCW could not afford screw up in front of their biggest audience in their history, and everyone knows that, and so things were settled immediately. I mean, by the time the story was out that there was a problem, there was no problem already.
Well, was Flair given the 2-year contract extension?
As far as I know, he was, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it would definitely make sense for, I'm sure Flair was never the type of guy to hold up a promoter or hold up an organization, but just the circumstances regarding this entire match tonight, I guess he felt it was worth an additional 2 years, and who can blame him? He's got to leave the ring tonight.
Yeah, well, that's another story.
Well, what's going on?
Well, Flair, it's really, I think only Ric Flair knows, and maybe even Ric Flair doesn't know. WCW has no intention of retiring Ric Flair. I mean, that's just a gimmick to sell pay-per-view orders because the company has, lost a lot of money this year, and they need to justify the Hulk Hogan deal and justify next year's budget and all these kinds of things having to do with, the corporate structure. So they need a record, and they're going to get a record today. So this was just a way to sell tickets, and they want to bring Flair back as soon as possible after this thing. Now Flair himself telling everyone he won't come back. I don't know if he's saying that because he's afraid that if he says something else, it'll hurt the buy rate. Or actually, I doubt that because that doesn't make any sense. I don't know if he's, everyone in the company is saying that Flair is saying he's not coming back, but the company does not believe Flair because they are, they've already planned and booked and scripted and the whole comeback. So, as far as, I don't really, it could be Flair's last match, but if it is at that point, it's his decision, not theirs.
How long do you think it will be if Flair agrees to the comeback scenario? Would that be a matter of months or a year?
They're talking 4 months.
Wow.
Which to me is another. It's a real bad situation because you're talking about a short term. Tonight's going to be a big money night for them, the biggest one they've ever had, without a doubt. But in the long term, what does it do for the long-term credibility the next time they try to swerve the public?
Yeah.
Again, we're going to have the same situation, and then all of a sudden it won't work the second time. And that's when you run into problems. That's the problems the wrestling business has had this year was when, not this year, but, in recent years, especially WCW, is you continually have these stipulations and you don't deliver, you don't deliver on your stipulations, and then the stipulations, people won't buy the stipulations anymore. So now we've got the ultimate, the two biggest stars in the last 25 years of the wrestling business, or last 15 years, whatever. And the loser must retire, the ultimate stipulation match, and it's actually just, another gimmick that will not, that may not be adhered to. It actually may be adhered to. That's up to Flair, though. The company has no intention of adhering to it, is my point.
There you go. Cat's out of the bag.
Yep. 4 months away. They've already scripted his return.
It's kind of ridiculous to do that tribute at the beginning of the show then.
That made you look like a goof.
Make me look like a jabroni.
But I did think it was interesting that he'd already signed his 2-year extension, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think this helped.
Shady.
Yeah.
Silly, gimmicky.
Yeah, and you guys were pretty a little hard on it too, because you'd said, well, does that mean for the next 4 months Flair's going to be booking? And then Meltzer kind of says that they only gave him the term booker for like money reasons, that like he's not effectively doing any of that stuff. So if he did, he'd be surprised,
Because Bischoff was running the show at this point.
With Hogan. Yeah. That was the bookers. And so, they got to do what they want to do. You do start getting a little critical of WCW as well, saying that it's turning out to be like WWF in the mid-90s because Earthquake is coming in and taking over Vader's program.
Mm-hmm.
Honky Tonk's going to take the title off Johnny B. Bad. You don't see Duggan losing to Steve Austin. This is the last match for Terry Funk on this pay-per-view coming up. Brutus Beefcake appears to be coming in, and they may even be the masked man, because a lot of people asked about that.
Which he was, yes.
Yeah. And then it was funny, too, because Meltzer even said if it's him, which it was, it says it's going to be really hard to explain because he was present on the screen during most of the appearances of the masked man thus far. He was there. So, but that was also because Perfect wasn't going to come in anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, you guys were pretty critical of WCW and what they were up to at that time.
But we held out hope that when Worlds Collide was going to be the start of a whole new era for WCW. Monthly pay-per-views with AAA, Lucha, great stars. But alas, it didn't.
You guys really did hold up hope. This is actually my next clip is you guys talking about AAA specifically and what you think this could mean.
Good timing.
Big pay-per-view in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, I've been reading The Torch and The Observer this past week, and I tell you, it's just 2 weeks away. WCW has run some spots on their programs, but a lot of people think that it's not enough at this point. Is there time to get a good buy rate for this show?
Well, not if you're talking about English language viewers. I would say no. Now they've got a huge, and John, you know this as good as anyone. They have a huge Spanish language following.
Oh yeah.
And if it's promoted correctly, they can still do. I think they can still do a pretty good buy rate. Possibly, I don't know if the guaranteed pay-per-view is different from house show, and it's nationwide, not just small pockets where there's a large Spanish population. But I think they could do a decent number of buys. Not 100,000 like a WCW or a WWF, but I think they could do a decent number of buys. From the Spanish audience, if the Spanish audience knows about it. I had no prediction. Shot in the dark. We're all going to learn. We're all going to learn. I think they'll do real well at the sports arena, though. There's no reason they shouldn't.
Yeah. It's going to be a big card, and a lot of people are talking about it, and I'm sure the hardcore wrestling fans out there are definitely going to get it, because those of you who have not seen this type of wrestling before are going to be just amazed when you watch it. Fortunately, there are the English announcers, Ed Credibility with Mike Tenay and Chris Cruz handling the play-by-play on it. I'm excited about the show. I can't wait for it in a couple of weeks. It's really going to open up a lot of eyes, especially those who have not seen it before.
I'm actually very excited about the show myself. After yesterday on the Galavision, I saw the AAA show from Veracruz, and it was one of the best house shows that I've seen in a long time, and it really got me jazzed up for this show. I think that the LA lineup, every match on the card should be 3 stars or better, and 4 of the 5 matches could easily top 4 stars without even a stretch. From top to bottom, it's the strongest card on. You never know. Someone could get hurt. Timing could be wrong. Who knows what could happen on a pay-per-view? That's the thing of being live. But on paper, this is the strongest lineup on a pay-per-view. This year.
Are you going to be at the live event?
Yeah, I'm going to go down for it.
Yeah, I was thinking about getting out there myself. It was just it's a big show, and it's certainly could be an historic match here in the United States, because depending on how well it's received, what the buy rate is, and it could either lead to future pay-per-views. I'm sure there's an option in a contract that Ron Skoller and IWC have with Ted Turner's WCW, that if it goes over a certain number of buys, then they pick up an option to do another one.
They're talking about doing 3 next year, what I heard. So it would be, if this one does, just as a number, 50,000 buys, and that's not an unreasonable number. It may not come close. It may do way more. There's no way of knowing until it's done. But if it does that, I expect this will be, part of the wrestling landscape in this country. It's going to be on pay-per-view on a regular basis at that point, and I'm sure they'll be running more house shows in the major cities, and it's going to be a part. It's going to be the new third big promotion. Unfortunately, that creates another problem with the number 2 promotion. When they're both under the same umbrella, it creates a tremendous jealousy problem. It's already there, and if this is too successful, it's going to be an inner office jealousy problem that's unbelievable.
Well, that should be for some more interesting reading in the Observer, and for talk shows like this to speak about what's going to happen after the first pay-per-view event.
Yep. Missed the boat on it.
And it is interesting, too, because he said if it's too successful, it's going to create animosity with who they're working with. But if it's successful enough, they'll probably utilize it a lot more. So it was like they had to walk a fine line anyways, even if they were trying,
Yeah. Yeah, it was mishandled, for sure. I don't know how it was marketed. I guess these are questions if we can get Bischoff or Skoller for sure to bring them back on to discuss this. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. I also reached out to Dave again this week. I sent him an email. It was time to fill out pick your choices for the Observer annual Hall of Fame award. So I dropped him a note and told him how important he was to the show over the course of its run, and we would love to do a special with him to review his some of his appearances, and I would love for that opportunity to happen, because how important he was over the course of the show's run. Haven't heard back.
Yeah, and on top of that, he just announced he's no longer going to be doing the print version, so it's kind of timely too.
No kidding. When did that come out? I don't even know about that.
This week, he put out a little thing saying he's no longer going to be
publishing.
Yeah, it's going to be online only.
Oh, okay. So he's not actually going to mail out. He's still going to do the Observer, but he's not going to mail them out anymore. There'll be no more physical copies of it.
Correct. No more physical.
You can just print it up. You can just print it off of the online, because that's how I read the Observer today. It's like it's the same thing, except for it's not the print version. I can't read that small type anymore anyway.
But I do think that there's still a group of key old timers who get theirs in the mail, and that's how they like it, and they don't want to be online anyway. So there will be some who will
that is a little backlash. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a little erosion of the subscriber base. But I'm glad he's continuing. It's been such a mainstay for 30-something years now.
Yeah. I didn't mean he was full on retiring. He's just no longer making.
Yeah, he's not going to print them up, and it's going to save him an awful lot of money with postage and everything else.
Yeah, most likely that's the idea. And I'm sure the contingency of people who pay for it online to get it, versus the ones who want it in the paper form.
It's $11.99 a month for the subscription.
Yeah,
and it's just something I have always subscribed to it and always will, really. Even though I only read about 20% of it.
Yeah, and you put it in the stack with the rest.
Well, I don't get the printed version anymore.
Oh,
I was one of the early adapters to online only. Wade Keller still sends me the Torch printed version.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I've emailed him and told him to stop sending them to me. I mean,
cease and desist.
Because I just take them and I look and I throw it in the trash. I don't even read it.
Huh, that's weird. But it is neat. It would be cool to have them on just because it is kind of timely.
It is. Yeah, that's another reason. Maybe I'll try to reach out again, because I think that would be kind of cool, and just kind of, regardless of how polarizing he is in the social media landscape, he was still the guy.
Yeah.
And to in many aspects, he still is. With just the information alone that he's got to compile every single week.
I mean, I definitely hold true to the fact that if you pay attention to what someone is saying, so you can say that what they say doesn't matter, or that just kind of proves that it does, right?
Yeah. Just people calling gaslight. I mean, they're just, the ridiculousness, how ridiculous the social media landscape is. And everyone's always looking to pick a fight or discredit you. All these anonymous folks.
Yeah. And I love that they try to argue over who's more relevant in a world of TV wrestling. You're like, none of us are really relevant to the product.
No, and it doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Makes no business impact on the product, it's kind of fun. It's funny. People don't get it. But yeah, that would be cool. And yeah, you guys were really hopeful about this, so we'll see.
We're definitely hopeful. I mean, the question that I have, and I don't know if Scholar answered it, or I don't think there were Spanish announcers. Or there might have been. Maybe Arturo Rivera was doing the Spanish version. Was it marketed right? It's just a lot of still unanswered questions. It's almost like a big mystery. On One and Done, it was over.
Yeah.
It was a fabulous show. But could have been.
And then I was talking to Roy about it a little bit, Mr. AAA. He was even telling me that the consensus in the arena with a lot of the Mexican fans was they were very unhappy with the presentation. regardless of how good matches may have been, the presentation made them very unhappy. So
because it wasn't the authentic lucha
Yeah.
libre that they were accustomed to.
yeah, they changed a lot of things, and so maybe we'll dig into
Yeah.
that after it happens.
Yeah. I'm sure Roy will be able to kind of fill us in.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. Let's see. You get a bunch of callers calling in with Meltzer, which was all right. It was pretty neat. I got a kick out of this one guy. He said he went to LNS and got a magazine from '83 and got to read up a whole lot about Bob Backlund, and now he wants Bob Backlund to win the title because he thinks Backlund was cool back in '83.
There you go, Tom.
So
get into that time capsule.
Yeah, that was great. Peter from Levittown calls in and asks if the tag team division is going to get any better in WWF, and Meltzer kind of stops him and is like, "Hey, there's a problem across the international landscape. There are just no good tag divisions right now," and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He was even saying that in Japan they do a tag team tournament that is coming up, and there's like no excitement around it because there's no teams anyone knows, So
tag teams were so big years ago, and then it just kind of didn't mean as much, and still doesn't mean shit.
Now I know that Vince McMahon has always said that he doesn't like tag matches because he has to pay 4 people for one match versus paying 2 people for one match. It's the same time in the ring, the same crowd reaction, but he's spending twice as much, right? So I get the business aspect, and I can understand to a degree why that would impact his desire to have a lot of tag teams. You know what I mean? It's 2 for 1, except opposite. Do you think that his lack of pushing a tag division influenced promoters across the world? That they were like, "Hey, it doesn't matter over there. Why should it matter here?"
It's a good question. I don't know. All I knew is when I was growing up, the tag teams were I love the tag teams. The Mongols, who were in the 60s. That was the original. That was Beppo and Guido Mongo, and Beppo was actually Nikolai Volkov. And he was just a kid, but he was huge. And I remember that. I remember, obviously when I was watching heavily, I mean, I'll never forget Johnny Valentine and Antonio Pugliese teaming up, and then Valentine turned on him. And they lost the titles to Baron Cluner and Smasher Sloan, and Valentine. This is all 66, so, but, I love tag teams, even when the Valiant Brothers were a phenomenal tag team in the mid-70s. They were just like the charisma that they had. They were like the best I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And then when you kind of water it down, or you don't put an emphasis on it, maybe it was a spillover of sorts to other promotions. Who knows?
Yeah.
It was Vince McMahon. He didn't like something, that was it. Don't care what the fans think.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if he's not the only one who didn't, because he gets all the heat for not liking tag teams, but it sounds like that across the board there's been a lot of issues with that.
Could have been a change of tastes from the fans to the promoters, and it just didn't mean anything anymore. But that's why.
How much emphasis did you put on your shows to have tag teams?
I always had. Yeah, that was big. My IWAS, we had tag team champions. It was important.
Yeah. I remember you had the championships. I remember you would also do the mixed tag stuff, and seems like you liked the idea of tags more than
I did. I always loved tag teams. I thought they were great.
Yeah. Let's see. As we keep going through some of the calls, some of the things that are more notable, Brett from Islip calls in and asks if you have any more information about the local shows that were coming up that you mentioned last week. And you said no, but Dominic's called back in, so we'll just ask him in a second. So you do. You hang up on him and you bring on Dominic. He asked you a question you're very uncomfortable with. He asked you, as a Catholic, what you think about Vince's commercials that involve confessionals. And you basically just said, I'm not talking about that. And so then you said, hey, tell us about the Tommy D shows. And he does. So
A double dose of Dominic.
Yeah. Yeah, he just called right back in to wind you up a little bit. I don't think he intended to wind you up, but yeah. It was funny, though, because it did seem like a question that... Did you not talk to him outside of the show? Did he ever call you?
Not often, no.
Yeah. Because that seems like something you'd ask offline.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't call you offline, then he'd ask you wherever.
What a ridiculous question, though, as a Catholic. I mean, the confessionals. Of course, I don't know if I found it. I don't even remember it.
I don't remember it either, but I'm sure there was something minimal.
Something was going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of the fake outrage era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Planting a seed to see how much they could get away with.
Yeah, that's true too, probably. But yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes I think even with you watched a lot of stuff, and I get the impression that there were times you thought things were a bit distasteful, but you didn't take like a big stand on it. You just go, I shouldn't have done that, and then moved on.
It's wrestling.
Yeah, it's wrestling. I could just see anytime you don't like something being like, that's wrestling, and just moving on. And then when you really like something, be like, that's wrestling. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's how it was. That's wrestling. And that's wrestling.
Yeah.
It's the enunciation.
So
where you put that emphasis on what word. That's wrestling or that's wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to do? This is our last clip. It's Jeff from Bayside with Meltzer. And afterwards, there was a nice little tidbit you had about Hacksaw that I got a kick out of, and I kept that in as well.
Okay.
Let's go to line number 5 and speak to Jeff from Bayside.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. Nice to hear you back on the air, John.
Thank you, Jeff. How you been?
I've been doing okay. I got married.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I tracked down. I found that Missy Hyde had moved back to New York.
Oh, you hooked up with Missy?
No. And my wife is listening, so...
oh, okay.
Better just straighten that out.
Well, congratulations. When did you get married?
I got married at the beginning of October. Went up to Maine, looked for one of those fabulous IWCCW shows, but they didn't seem to be running when I was up there.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I really wanted to see Tony Atlas versus Tito Santana, but...
4 stars.
Hey, there you go. Basically, I'm just calling because there's all these pay-per-views that are coming up in a very short span of time. And they all seem to have these cage matches as the main event. And that's really a lot of overkill in a very short time period. I mean, the last time that there were 2 events back-to-back, the buy rates were just really, really crummy.
Right, that's right. Last year when WWF over Thanksgiving and WWF and WCW, they pulled each other out pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you look at what they did last year and also now with just these other, I mean, I really think, everybody's talking about the AAA pay-per-view is going to have probably the best wrestling that there will be on a pay-per-view this year, and it's going to have the smallest buy rate. And then you've got the, I mean, I don't know in this area if Long Island Cablevision or if Time Warner are showing the UWFI show, the shoot fight.
I saw a promo here on Cablevision yesterday for that.
Oh, so they are showing that?
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean that's 5 days after the AAA card.
That one, the UWFI one's going to be real tough. I think that. So see, the one difference with the AAA thing is that its base audience is an audience that isn't going to buy the WCW or the WWF. So it's kind of going from a different audience now. UWFI though, I think that they're going to really be caught in the crunch. It's a terrible time for them to be running a show, with the WCW big show and then WWF, 2 weeks later or less than 2 weeks later, 12 days later.
Yeah, it's really horrible timing. And then something like 5 days after that or 4 days after that is the Clash on TBS.
Right, then there's the Clash, then there's that, and then there's Ultimate Fight, which is drawing from a similar thing. That's going to be it'll be 3 weeks after the Survivor Series.
Well,
and then we got Starrcade. So I mean, it's like we're talking.
How much can you buy?
Generally, I think we'll be having like close to 2 a month next year.
Jeez.
Yeah. Plus, if you're going to count the Clash, is the WWF doing any sort of preview show for Survivor Series?
I don't know that they are, but they do it more often than not. So
yeah.
They probably are.
Yeah, because I mean, they ended the last taping for Raw with Savage and Backlund in some sort of encounter.
Right.
So you would imagine that if they were going to do any type of preview show, that would be the main event on that.
Right. They'd have to tape it at the next tapings if they're going to do it. But most often before pay-per-view they have that 2-hour preview show on USA.
Okay. Can I give a plug for the newsletter that I'm working for now, John?
You can go right ahead.
Okay. If anybody wants to send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Chair Shots, 459 Columbus Avenue, number 272, New York, 10024. That's the simple way for the zip. Mention the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. We'll send you out a free copy.
Okay, Jeff.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care now.
Bye.
You know, Dave, I was watching the yesterday the previews on the cable systems for UWFI, and they had Hacksaw Jim Duggan on the preview.
Kidding.
No, it was interesting. It was like a boxer and a wrestler. It was Hacksaw and a boxer. They were saying wrestling's better, boxing's better, wrestling's better, boxing's better. And then a guy comes up and says, "You're both wrong. It's UWFI because it's real." You know, so
that's really bizarre.
It was a very bizarre promo. When I saw that, I just shook my head and I said, "Here's Hacksaw, who is working for WCW, and he's certainly been one of the most recognizable faces in professional wrestling on a commercial, basically saying what he's doing is fake."
You're right. That's really. I'm kind of surprised he would do it. I guess it was before he signed his WCW deal.
Sure, he
needed the money that week.
Needed a few extra bucks.
Yeah.
But that was the deal there.
Hey-oh. That was Hacksaw too, wasn't it?
Oh, yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice tidbit there.
Do you remember Jeff from Bayside?
Jeff Cohen. Yes, I do.
Were you guys close? Because he really was just kind of shooting the shit at the beginning of that.
Yeah. I was fairly close with Jeff. He was a contributor to Pro Wrestling Spotlight newsletter. Used to write a little piece there. I knew him as a fan, as a listener. Someone went to my conventions, and he actually was trying to help with Herb Abrams during the first shows that Abrams promoted in New York. And that was the infamous show in Queens that was at a theater that had no heat and was canceled. And Jeff was kind of the setup man for that show. But he was a good guy.
Yeah,
Good guy.
I thought it was funny. I got married. Oh, when'd you get married? It was like a while of him just being like, "Hey, just calling in to let you know what's going on in my life."
Yeah.
That was cool. But I thought the conversation was really interesting because they talked about going nearly head to head on pay-per-views hurt both businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think in the WCW, WWE wars, I don't know if they actually did the same weekends ever again. I feel like that they had contrasted.
I think they stopped trying to do the head-to-head stuff. I mean, because they did it several times, and it obviously it splits the audience and it hurts both.
Yeah. I do wonder, just because it seems like the audiences are so different, if it's lucky for WWE that they're no longer on the pay-per-view thing by the time the AEW has sprouted doing a pay-per-view thing. I wonder if that's actually helped both of them to be more successful in what they're doing. The fact that WWE is just network, you know?
Yes.
But kind of neat. Hacksaw doing the UFI promo was funny.
Yeah. Well, he's a very interesting guy anyway. I mean, nice guy. I got to meet him outside of wrestling, actually, because he's from Iowa. Mm-hmm. And the Variety Children's Telethon was a big deal in Des Moines, Iowa. And artist I was managing, Sarah Darling's from Des Moines. And I used to book her every year to do the telethon while I was managing her, and Hacksaw was always there. So I was able to, to get to know him a little bit. 2011, 12, 13, those 3 years in particular.
A couple times I got to meet him. He was really nice and cool.
Very nice guy.
Yeah. I met him the first time at a comic book convention, New York Comic Convention. So it's huge. You got like 500,000 people walking around any given day.
Yeah.
And I just walked in and saw him, and I was like, "Oh shit, Hacksaw!" And then I just stood there and talked to him for like 15 or 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then I was all like, "Well, I better go check out some more of this thing." And like anytime I walk by, he'd be like, "Hey, buddy!" Like,
yeah.
I was like, "Should I give him my number? Should we go hang out after this thing?" Like,
yeah, great guy. Had obviously health problems in the last several years, and but he's doing well today, and he's still out there. He's still active. He's still doing shows, and Just a nice guy.
Yeah. Tough guy.
Tough guy.
Yeah. It was funny when he came to Tucson, I got to meet him again. And actually he's one of the first guys I got a picture of that I took a picture of that got to sign later on. When I was in high school, I was taking photography and he came through Alaska. And I took a picture of him as he was leaving. I just was walking around sort of towards the back, and he was like actually leaving the arena, but he didn't go to the meet and greet area. So no one really got to meet him.
Oh, okay.
And I was just all like, oh my God, Hacksaw, can I grab a picture? And he was all like, make it quick, And so I was like, hurried up, and he's sitting there with the thumbs up, and did that when I was 16. And then what was it? 5 years ago, 4, he came to town and I had it printed up, and I was like, I took this picture of you when I was 16. He remembered the show. It was also cool. He used to do a podcast with Sean Mooney, who also lives out here. So I was like, did you call Sean? He was all like, he lives here? He goes, I should. I was like, all right. So, yeah, good guy. Better than boxing. There's one other clip I pulled that's not really part of your show. It was an ad.
Okay.
So it's just a quick couple seconds that I was all like, what? Where the hell is this going?
All right.
And
let's hear it.
Have you ever had an assistant?
Go out and find every song since 1950 that starts like this.
Coming right up, boss.
Who lived in your computer? Played video games with a friend?
Yes! Nice slap shot.
Who's thousands of miles away? Or sent someone a fax? From the beach. You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.
Wow. Doesn't that sound interesting from 1994?
Right? In 94, it was like, this is an impossibility. And you're hearing this and you're going, oh, shoot. Is Apple about to announce Siri?
AT&T.
And then AT&T is going to be the one to bring it to you.
Not.
I don't know where that ended up, but yeah.
Well, everyone can do it now, all the companies, but back then that's an interesting look into the future.
Yeah, and I do know that what I also thought was interesting. I mean, Siri wasn't launched immediately with the iPhone or anything, but when the iPhone was initially launched, it was exclusive to AT&T. And so
Siri was
the iPhone. When the iPhone was first launched, it was
it was through AT&T exclusively.
Yeah. Yep. You had to have AT&T if you were going to have an iPhone. And so it makes me wonder if there was a partnership between those technologies or anything at any point. But
yeah, wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't been an AT&T customer for years.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I didn't like their coverage.
It's actually ironic. When I moved to New York, that's when I switched to AT&T. I didn't have an iPhone, but my thought process was, because they were exclusively with the iPhone, that they would have more towers than other people and I'd have better service.
Yeah. I always had problems with the internet service when I had it, and I just dropped it, and I've been with Verizon for a long time.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. Let's get sponsorship by Verizon.
Yes, and I'll have I only have one payment left on my iPhone.
Yeah, then it's yours.
Finally. I mean, it's still in like mint condition, really. But I keep getting emails now. Upgrade iPhone 15, trade yours in, get one for free, this and that. I ain't doing it.
Yeah.
My payment's going down $40 a month next month.
Yeah. No, the only reason I ended up doing it when they said that like a year or two ago was so I could get the fiance a new phone. So
there you go. Hey, listen, that's interesting show today.
Yeah. Really cool. It's a nice one because you are very hopeful. You're having a good time. There's not a lot of time left on here. You're going to make the most of it, even though you don't realize it. This was one of those good ones.
Yeah, it certainly was. And looking up, this little case. This is where I keep the upcoming shows. And this case is probably from the 80s. It's probably from the original. And so here are the cassettes for whatever shows we got left are right in this little box.
That's them.
There they are. That's it.
It's the literal archives.
It's it. They're dwindling down. So I wanted to talk about upcoming recording schedules, so everyone is prepared. We're going to take Thanksgiving week off.
Mm-hmm.
This show, as you know, that we taped today will drop for patrons this coming Sunday, which will be the 12th of November. So patrons will get it first. It'll drop for the general public on the 16th. Thanksgiving's the 23rd. So we're not going to record next week. And then we'll record again after Thanksgiving. And that'll be the week of the 27th of November. And then we'll record a few more weeks. And then probably we'll cut out for Christmas week and New Year's. But we'll discuss that as we get closer. But we're not going to, this will be the last show for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So see you all later. Have some good turkey.
Yeah. Enjoy the family. That's what it's all about. That's food.
Right. That is right. Yep. And for me, it's kind of interesting because I am not going to New York for Thanksgiving this year.
Really? What happened?
There's several factors. I mean, with my nephew's work schedule, my sister's work schedule, if I get up there, I can't drive up there really till the 18th of the month. Well, no, we're talking about the 20th of the month around there. Time I get there, I have a meal, and then I got to drive back. We'd have to drive back on the 25th because my attorney invited me to see Monday Night Raw in Nashville.
Hey.
in the suite with the food and all the accoutrements. And I'm like, the drive up there, and I just I just traded my Tahoe in. I had my Tahoe since 2018, and it was getting up there, and mileage and warranty was about to expire. So went to the dealership and got myself into a lease, which Chevy Traverse. And because I don't drive as much as I used to, I put all right, I only need 10,000 miles a year. Because right now, literally, I'm only driving like 4,000 or 5,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
Right now. So I'm like, all right, I'll save that for driving up there for Christmas for a couple of weeks. And I will not be in New York for Thanksgiving for the first time. And I can't even remember. I think I might have only missed one Thanksgiving with my family.
Well, at least you'll be there for Christmas. For us, it's always like the flip. Do we go for Christmas or do we go for Thanksgiving? And we kind of rotate accordingly depending on, So,
because you're going to visit family in California.
Yep. We're going to be with my grandma, so she's not alone for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. And we already found there's a really nice restaurant we had, actually, my grandpa's last Thanksgiving. We had it like kind of a takeout from this one place. We're going to go back to that place, but this time dine in, and it looks like it's going to be really good. So we're excited about it.
It's good to take a break to visit with the family, and for me, it's like, it's almost like my favorite holiday. I love the family time, giving thanks and all of that. So this year it'll be a little different.
Yeah.
So we'll skip it, but hey, listen, I'm going to Raw.
It's gonna be good. Raw's gonna be good.
Get Cody Rhodes.
Yes. I got it. You should get one too. They're selling the Cody weight belts, but foam ones.
Oh, I can't wait. See if I can put that around my waist.
Yeah, there you go. It'll be good. It'll be worth it. Then
it'll rip in half if I try to put that around my waist. I don't have a big of a waist that I had back in the 90s.
No, you're doing.
I'm like Mickey B now, 44 waistline and all.
Yeah.
The Prince of Rock and Roll, 44 waistline and all. So anyway, I feel good about where I am weight wise. Anyway, hey, listen, I'm rambling on. I don't fucking.
Yeah,
we're just
ready for food.
Chatting it up.
Just chat it up.
So anyway, so it's good for you to get away.
Yeah.
Take a break for a week, come back, and we finish up the run with a little Christmas break thrown in there in between, and figure out what we're going to do as we enter 2024.
Yeah, I think we've spitballed a few ideas, and I'm excited about some of them. So we'll see how it all pans
Yes,
out.
exactly. So give us your plugs and let us know what's going on in your crazy life outside of this podcast.
Yeah,
And
I'm over at
congratulations for getting your car back on the road.
Yeah, my car's back on the road, so we're gonna hit the road. Gonna do that. I mean, I'm obviously here, youtube.com, Pro Wrestling Spotlight, with you every week. I'm over there on youtube.com/Queen of Carnage with Medusa weekly as well. And we're just days away from basically relaunching Wrestling on the Rock. So give us a follow over there. WrestlingOnTheRocks.com for that.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, Marsh, and we will see you in a couple weeks. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap up this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Don't forget, if you want more content and you want the archives and everything else that we do, patreon.com/John Arezzi. As Marsh indicated, our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe to that if you would like to see all the videos of this podcast and all the other videos that are up there. So that is youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. We have groups on Facebook, 2 of them for Matt Memories, 1 of them for Pro Wrestling Spotlight. So we're everywhere. Twitter at John Arezzi, Instagram at John Arezzi, Threads at John Arezzi as well. If you'd like to get a copy of my book signed to you, send me an email, john@mattmemories.com for $25. We'll send one out to you. That sister podcast that we do, Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, covering the shows I attended at the Mecca of all arenas 50 years ago. We have that. The new podcast is out November 12th, 1973, episode 25, Pedro Morales against Larry Hennig. So check that out where you get your favorite podcast, Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, co-hosted by Tim Poutre, written and researched by Richie Garcia. And that book that we reference all the time, Wrestling in the Garden by Scott Teal and J. Michael Kenyon, is available at crowbarpress.com. And I want to thank especially the patrons, our executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway, and for each and every one of the patrons for your support, helping with the production costs for this show. Until 2 weeks from now, when we relive more history with you, this is John Arezzi. Have a great and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We'll see you soon.